I don't have firm guidance from management at the present time. We're actually at the end of our hour on the schedule, but let me at least raise the question whether the audience has any questions they would like to put to our speakers. We have a tremendous amount of expertise up here, and it's an ideal time for you to put questions with respect to East Asia. Yes, over there.
Thank you very much, Tatsuo Master from Japan. I have a hypothetical question to three panelists. Short answer is fine, but North Korea is developing nuclear weapons, seems to be almost unchecked. And they are already ready to install on the head of ballistic missiles, possibly. So once they install all these weapon systems, and what if they may use against any of three countries? How China, Korea, Japan, America may react? What is a possible scenario or reactions? Thank you.
Do any of you want to take that on? Well, maybe picking up on what Professor Jia said, maybe I say something about Trump administration. We actually have no idea what Trump's foreign policy is going to be in general, and particularly toward this part of the world. He said he obviously has an animus against imports from China to the United States. He said he's unhappy with contribution to the U.S.-Korean alliance and the U.S.-Japan alliance of those two partners. I'm not aware that he's addressed North Korea at all, but North Korea is trying very hard to develop a three-stage missile, and there's only one reason. We had an interesting session earlier today on space. North Korea, I'm positive, has no interest in space exploration as such. It wants to reach the United States with a weapon. That comes just this close to an act of war. And the question is how the Trump administration would respond to it. But one possibility is that they will shoot down the missile. And Professor Jia suggested that some of his advisors have suggested that. He also suggested that China wants stability in the area, but North Korea does not want stability in the area. So moving to destabilize the area, at least in the respect of nuclear weapons. And so I turn it over to Mr. Jia to ask, Professor Jia to ask how, I know this involves conjecture or history, which Chinese scholars are uncomfortable with, but how China might respond if North Korea moves very seriously to further missile testing and the U.S. threatens to shoot down the missile.
Well, it is in China's interest to stop North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. But China has to balance between, the means of stopping North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. In terms of means, we're talking about economic sanctions at different levels. At the maximum level, we have a problem of humanitarian problem. In other words, if we stop food from going to North Korea, then North Korean people may starve to death. Okay, and then you have the military means. The military means, creates a lot of uncertainties, okay, in terms of how you are going to deal with the the situation, whether you'll be able to secure the nuclear weapons or destroy them and create a nuclear disaster, and also, what if the situation became chaos and then you have, some army officers taking control of the nuclear weapons, and that become a problem. And also, in case of a military conflict, then what about the refugee problem? So there are all kinds of things involved when you try to think about what's the best way to deal with the North Korean nuclear problem. I think on top of that, we have a problem of coordinating with other countries, especially with the United States. Okay. Many Chinese, suspect that the U.S. wants to contain China. Okay. So if this is the case to these people, China should not coordinate with the U.S. As much, because North Korea, however a threat its nuclear program can be for China, can be a distraction to the U.S. Okay. So and these people have their own voice also in China and affecting of the Chinese government. So it's a complicated problem. I think over time, as the North Korea develops more nuclear weapons and more missiles, China's position, or conduct more tests, China's position would harden to the extent that, if they try to test, hypothetically, if the U.S. shoot down one of the testing missiles, China probably would not feel bad about it. Okay? And of course, if North Korea attacks another country with nuclear weapons, then definitely China would side with another country if the attack is not provoked. So it depends on the situation. But certainly, it's in China's interest, personally, I believe, it's in China's interest to stop North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. It's in China's interest to work with other countries to make sure that it happens. But at the level of tactics and strategy, probably we need to have more consultation. Thank you.
Some years ago, I've forgotten the exact date, China found that it had some problems with the pumps that pump oil to North Korea. And that, for 3 days, I think North Korea did not get any oil. And that got their attention. And I suggest that should be added to the menu of possible things, which can be send a message without being as provocative as some of the other issues you mentioned. Ambassador?
I think
this is not maybe the time to ask my colleagues, panelists, to ask questions from me, but I was very intrigued by 2 words uttered by each one of them. By Korean friend Ju Chol-ki, he said, Korea may have to take bold action twice. Bold action, what does it mean? That's point 1. For China, he just said that maybe there's a possibility of Trump administration taking preemptive strike. In that case, I think before preemptive strike, Americans would ask China, can't you twist the arm of North Korea more? If not, we'll go with preemptive strike. In that case, what would be the reaction of China? These are the 2 issues that come up to me. I'm not a moderator, so I'm sorry to ask, but...
Okay. Yeah, I think because of all these crises or the critical elements, we need better negotiating through diplomacy and find solution while we still have 1-2 years time. I used to say from the beginning of my government 4 years ago, we have to do in 2-3 years time, but we spent only 2 years. We spent largely 20 years without finding solutions. So we only have 2 to 3 years to settle, and we have to find the clue from next year. So that's why we need to talk very candidly among the key partners and deep talks, not just cosmetic talks and sinual of just a suggestion of things, but we need to engage very seriously. We need to discuss all problems, and at the same time, as I said, we remain open to help North Korea build up. Because we are one compatriot, and we need to help North Korean economy if North Korea only abandon nuclear weapon program, and then we can realize a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. So that we very much need keen and talks and frank talks among the key partners, among the Security Council members, permanent members, and then still I think we can find clue of the solution. And for the time being, North Korea doesn't want to talk even to Chinese about this nuclear problem, but they want to help survive the dignity of the regime. But dignity of the regime then might face criminal charge at the International Criminal Court. That is a serious blow than even the strike or whatever. So we need to combine all these efforts and engage in serious dialogue with North Korea, both bilaterally and trilaterally, or what six-party talk, to bring them to come out for a conference table. And bold action, but if doing all these things, we fail to prevent North Korea having 100 nuclear warheads, I think South Korean public will not, just wait and, live with North Korea having nuclear weapon of 100, and we are just there, So it will be a very serious problem. And I think still we have an optimistic way of approach, and we should engage all our means, and we hope very much the start of new government will go for that direction in the United States, and we engage in serious talk and, joint solution.
Thank you very much. My name is Ido from Japan. I'd like to ask all three speakers about the cooperation in trade. As Mr. Juchuruki has commented, Japan is a member, participated in the negotiation for TPP, and Korea has expressed the intention to participate or to join the TPP negotiations. On the other hand, China and Korea have made the huge progress in FTA. But on the other hand, in comparison with the big progress in the financial cooperation in East Asia or among three countries after the currency crisis in Asia, under the framework of ASEAN plus Japan, China, and Korea, I think we have still more room to do in the area of the trade cooperation. I would like to ask, so to say, and in Japan also, recently we have heard that maybe considering the present situation of TPP, we should put more effort in the negotiation for RCEP and so on. So I would like to hear this time from all other speakers your views about the trade cooperation in East Asia. Thank you.
I could supplement that question. I think it's fairly clear, at least for the next 2 years, President-elect Trump will not touch TPP. He will not submit it to Congress. The U.S. will not join. There are 11 other countries who have signed on, and it raises a question about whether TPP could go forward without the United States, perhaps the U.S. joining at a later time. So if I could supplement the question that has been put by adding that, who wants to begin?
I think trade liberalization is all the more necessary, and we have to help save the WTO mechanism and also regional trading mechanism. And we have built a lot through APEC process, Bogle Declaration, and quite many achievements have been done, and the APEC is still ongoing. So in due course of time, maybe we can address this question together. Of course, the UFTP is keep alive, and we may join as the second, tier. But again, if there is something from Korean perspective, it is better engage China as well, rather than electing one by another thing. That goes to RCEP as well. So our position, we are the only country who has established FTA with China, with the European Union, with the United States. So we are quite okay, but we are very much promoting promotional in terms of promoting in terms of trade liberalization. So we really hope that way, and we have responsibility as a big trading countries in the world. While Europe is suffering from setback also, then we can take our own responsibility of pushing forward that kind of liberalization agenda. Keep alive.
I think the Chinese government certainly favors RCEP because the threshold is lower for membership, and also it's more inclusive. Recently, President Xi Jinping talked about Asia Pacific, the regions, free trade area. So on the basis that this is inclusive, not exclusive, I think TPP is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. But the problem with TPP is, from the Chinese perspective, is the way that President Obama tried to sell it in the Congress. He used China as an excuse. Maybe this is he thought this is a good idea to let the Congress to get congressional support. He said we should pass the TPP because in this way we would the U.S. would make the rules rather than the Chinese. So I mean this is the way that make a lot of Chinese think that TPP is against China. Personally, I think probably TPP is more a pursuit of the U.S. championship of the TPP is more a reflection of the U.S. pursuit of its own interests than anything than to target China. But the problem is most people when they hear how the rhetoric and also the rhetoric on the part of the people who don't like China in the U.S., they think that TPP, or at least U.S. efforts to promote TPP, was a conspiracy against China.
Thank you very much. It's really saddened to hear that so much negative story about TPP. However, I think now we are living in the world without TPP, so why can't we wait for some time until U.S. may change. So if it is clear that U.S. cannot change the attitude towards TPP, yes, there's a possibility that we may change the clause regarding the validation of the TPP with the GDP clause and have it started without United States. But it's, I think we'd rather have U.S. in it. And I think we'd like to have Korea, China in it as well. I agree with Chinese friend that it was not a very good way of selling that TPP, saying that, hey, we can't make China to have the rules making rules. So I think it's not easy for China to join with that kind of statement. But I think it doesn't mean that it's exclusive. And after 4 years, we've been able to make a very high-level FTA, which we have never done. And so I think we should keep to that and try to have them rather than renegotiate, restart everything. And it's like a sort of a pearl necklace, and each pearl was shined very carefully in 4 years, the 12 pieces, and the biggest one is now sort of out, but still I think we really would like to finish it, if possible, with that biggest pearl, because I think we were able to attain it because U.S. was there. If without U.S., we would not have come this far. So we'd really like them to rethink. Although how practical in next 2 years, I sort of share what Richard just said. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We've gone well over the hour on our schedule. I think it's time for me to bring this session to a close. I think I can share all of your view that we've heard from 3 very authoritative and interesting speakers.